Okay, if you like Van Halen, I think you're going to love this video. Back in March of 1979, they put out Van Halen 2, and then, of course, went on tour. And I found a concert review of a concert they did in New Haven, Connecticut. This was in August of 1979. And the person that wrote this review did not like the concert. And they go into detail about these things related to Van Halen, what the concert was like. So if you're a fan of Van Halen, I think you're really going to dig this. So anyway, this is from the Record Journal, Saturday, August 18th, 1979, page 46. And the headline of the article is, "Frankly, Van Halen disappointed a bit." The Pits. Van Halen is miserably poor in concert. No tricky introductions, no light turn of the phrase. The best way to put it is simply, Van Halen stinks. Van Halen is a very immature performing band. On stage, they are disorganization personified. They have no observable sense of timing, play fairly well in only their peak moments, have a hate-inspiring, starstruck stage presence, and a light show that's glaringly ugly enough to make a teetotaler don shades. The Van Halen concert at the New Haven Coliseum last Sunday was a haven for 12 to 16-year-olds. Appropriately enough, the name of the warm-up act was Screams. Screams at concerts are never worth the noise they produce, and this band is no exception to that rule. Screams is an alleged heavy metal, probably led band from England, and should return as soon as possible. The lead singer shouts incoherent lyrics at the audience while the guitarist, bass player, and drummer churn away like a washing machine with a lot less style. Sadder was Van Halen's set, loosely built around lead singer David Lee Roth's egocentricities. None of the band's numbers were anywhere near the quality or perfection of its studio recordings. Fire and Eruption were the only professionally played songs of the evening, although the offensive lighting almost killed their effectiveness. Now, before I go on here, during the original David Lee Roth days, I only saw him one time. I saw him on the 1984 tour. And because I was way too young when they first hit, and when this stuff was out, I was just a little kid. But by 1984, I was going to concerts. And to be honest with you, I remember them being a little bit, I don't know, sloppy. Eddie Van Halen actually, to me, on stage seemed like he was bored. And the most kind of fun part of the show, believe it or not, was Michael Anthony. But anyway, I'd be curious, those of you that saw Van Halen back in the original with David Lee Roth, what you thought of it. Okay, then subhead, Juveniles. Van Halen vainly attempts to copy Led Zeppelin, but its collective lack of intelligence prevents even a mediocre copy. Zeppelin is an awesome package of talent featuring some of rock's finest musicians, while Van Halen is a brown paper bag of juvenile hacks. Particularly sad about Van Halen and reflective of its attempted Zeppelin steal is its approach to sex. Zeppelin has always been sexually oriented. Besides its breathy, pulsing rhythms and abrupt leads that tend to rise and build into a disorienting climax, Zeppelin's lyrics have a cool sexuality with often aggressive overtones. Robert Plant's voice is Zeppelin's most sexually suggestive instrument, ranging in quality from coy growl to the trademark orgasm moan. Van Halen is strictly into schoolboy and girl, of course, sex. From the childish witlessness of Beautiful Girls and the brash backseat hayride of Show Your Love, Roth's vocals and technological vocal distortions are completely derived from Zeppelin, but lack Plant's pacing or structure. Also, they're nothing sexy about, I think that's what it's supposed to say theirs. Also, there's nothing sexy about bad music. I never and maybe it's just because I haven't read enough in old interviews or something, but I never thought of Van Halen as being a copy of Led Zeppelin, even close. So anyway, that kind of throws me when I read that. Studio crutch. Although both Van Halen albums, especially the first, have fine musical moments and some riveting riffs, they weren't heard in performance. Apparently, the group is victim of the multi-track studio crutch, because live, it's a dinosaur that can't carry its own weight. Roth is I love this. Roth is a Freudian delight. On stage, he's a prancing fool. And then in parentheses, it says, sorry, FZ. And I think what they're saying is, sorry, Frank Zappa, because I think he had a song called Dancin' Fool. Anyway, I think that's what they're saying here. So Roth is a Freudian delight. On stage, he's a prancing fool. Sorry, FZ. He behaves like a proverbial headless chicken, in spasms, pausing only long enough to tell stories about his various sexual misadventures. Roth's only ambition in front of a crowd is to stand in front of the spotlights as long as possible. With an ego like his, he should have a beach ball for a head. Bass player Mike Anthony also has problems. The first is his lack of familiarity with his instrument. Brutally bad. The crowd cheered during his synthesized bass solo, largely due to its own ignorance of synthesization. Anthony is fond of loud stage front solos, but one chord a solo does not make. Look, when I saw Van Halen, the time with David Lee Roth, Michael Anthony, his bass solo consisted of him, as I recall, taking one bass guitar, throwing it across the stage, gung, 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 so it made a bunch of noise, while he held another guitar and rolled across the stage while it made noise. And I got to be honest with you, that was one of my favorite bass solos I've ever seen in my life. Super entertaining. And by the way, I have to say this. You know, back when I was listening to Van Halen back then, Michael Anthony to me was just kind of that, oh yeah, that other guy, the bass player. As the years have progressed, what a gem that guy was. You know, now you know, so much time has passed. We're all older and everything. You start realizing he was one of the coolest people in that band. I mean, what a cool guy. He's got this great personality. He's always smiling, and that signature harmony that you hear in all that early Van Halen stuff, and even after Sammy Hagar came in the band, that was all him. That was all Michael Anthony. He has this really high-pitched voice, and it just added so much personality. So the older I've gotten, the more I've gone, you know what? He might have been, you know, I was always into Eddie Van Halen because I was a guitarist, and David Lee Roth because I loved the showmanship, and of course, Alex Van Halen, underrated, incredible drummer. But the older I get, the more I go, man, Michael Anthony's kind of the guy. I love that guy. Anyway, so and then when I'm curious how many of you saw them then when they got back together with David Lee Roth, but then they used Wolfgang. And I was, to be honest with you, I was bothered by that. And I kind of was like, I can't believe I wanted to see Michael Anthony. I can't believe. But I got to tell you something. Got to be honest with you. I really like Wolfgang. He is so talented. I'm actually glad now that I probably really still would have wished I had Michael Anthony there. But man, Wolfgang Van Halen, if you haven't seen him, if you haven't seen his stuff, he's a great guitar player. He's an excellent singer. He's an excellent musician all the way around, and songwriter and singer, and the guy's cool. Anyway, I love Wolfgang Van Halen. Okay, back to the article. Alex Van Halen is the band's drummer, so to speak. Although a Rolling Stone profile in June told us that both Van Halen brothers are fully educated musicians who could compose for an orchestra, Alex has trouble with his own kit. The guy just sits there and bangs away blindly. The weakness of the band's rhythm team is very apparent live. Van Halen actually lost several songs in their middles and had to catch up with each other before progressing. In the same Stone profile, Edward Van Halen was compared to Jimi Hendrix. Then he says, that's a lot of puke. Van Halen couldn't mop the stage that Hendrix stood upon, which is so funny listening to this now, because of course, Jimi Hendrix, I mean, how do you beat him? He's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, many people think. But Van Halen, looking back, you realize he is also one of the greatest, just revolutionary, pioneering guitar player. And actually a great songwriter too. They had so many cool tunes. Anyway, it's just funny reading this now because they were brand new and Eruption was known all over the place at this point, but they hadn't, of course, reached legend status like they are now. His studio dependence was evident as he blew lead after lead. Van Halen's only original guitar riff is the standard 30-second note run that's his claim to fame. Now, this is funny. Those of you that know Eddie Van Halen and what he does, listening to this paragraph is actually kind of comical. So listen to this. Unfortunately, this is referring to Eddie Van Halen and his playing. Unfortunately, he cheats to achieve it. Rather than play the entire riff with the fingers of his left hand, he places that hand in one position on the fretboard and hits the notes by striking the pinion strings with his right forefinger. Now, it's funny because they're talking about this like he's cheating as a guitar player, but he was actually revolutionizing. Well, he wasn't the first one to do it, but he's the one that really, really put that on the map. And he became super well known for that technique. And it was something that he developed, and so many people have just taken it to the stratosphere since then. And I know other people had done it before. It's just that he's the one that everybody kind of associates with it. He put it on the map. And they're talking about it like it's a crutch, when the reality of it is, it was his style. That's what he was doing. That's what he was known for. Okay. Van Halen is just a terrible performing band and a waste of the price of a ticket. However, heavy metal is not dead, since new albums by Led Zeppelin and Rainbow were scheduled for release this past week. If you're not listening to the new Zepp now, Atlantic Records is to blame. So the new Zeppelin and Rainbows would have been In Through the Outdoor, because that would have been the 79, and then Down to Earth with Rainbow. And Down to Earth, that was with Graham Bonnet, actually Roger Glover, Cozy Powell, Don Airey. Is that how you say his last name? Anyway, but I'm saying that because Graham Bonnet was the singer. They'd gone through, they had Dio, Graham Bonnet, Joe Lynn Turner, but this particular one that they're talking about here, Down to Earth, had the song Since You've Been Gone, which was kind of Rainbow really trying to get a hit single. Since you've been gone, da, la, 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 la. I don't know. It was an okay tune. Anyway, that's what they're talking about here, the new Rainbow and the new Led Zeppelin. The new album, Atlantic claims, is Zeppelin's most diverse, with cuts in the blues, southern, reggae, eastern, calypso, and cosmic genres. Blackmore's new album, which is Rainbow, of course, is at press time a fittingly dark mystery. Okay. Anyway, that's the end of they wrap the article up saying, even though Van Halen stinks, there's still some good stuff coming from Led Zeppelin and Rainbow. Anyway, if you're a Van Halen fan, and if you ever saw them in concert, I would love to hear your feedback. Because me, honestly, if I didn't love Van Halen so much, I don't know. I mean, I was, 14 years old or so when 1984 came out. I saw him on that tour, and I was mesmerized simply because I loved Van Halen. But in retrospect, they did, David Lee Roth was his normal self that we know. But again, Eddie looked tired, like he was bored. Michael Anthony did his thing, and it was maybe a little bit, in retrospect, a little bit underwhelming, but still, it was the original Van Halen lineup. So I sit here right now thinking it was so cool to be able to see that. Anyway, I'd love to get your feedback, what your experiences were, not only seeing Van Halen in concert, but here they were on Van Halen 2, and we're going to talk about this album in another video, but what did you think of Van Halen 2 compared to Van Halen 1 and the stuff that came after? So anyway, of course, follow the channel, like the video, please leave your comments, and you probably know somebody that also likes Van Halen and liked the music from this era, so please share this video with them. And with that, of course, as always, have yourself a fantastic day.